Alrighty, everyone, welcome to another special production here on Celtics Talk Weekly. We are giving you guys so many presents these last few weeks. We're getting so many good interviews on here. I love it too because I'm starting to get more comfortable in the camera. And today we have another very special guest today to talk all things sports media and Celtics hoops. We'd like to welcome Celtics beat reporter Bobby Krivitsky for Forbes here to the program. Bobby, how are you doing today?
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. Happy to do so. And I just want to say, I like the intro. That's my first time seeing it. So I thought that was pretty well done.
Well,
Shout out to Rob. Shout out to our host Rob on here. Did the intro. Phenomenal job, I will say.
Our compliments to the Rob. So our first question here is, what made you want to become a sports media reporter?
I think it's like all of us where we love sports, probably from an early age in most cases, and you're only good enough for your talents to take you so far. So I played in high school and at the collegiate level, I was a student manager for the men's basketball team at Syracuse University, and that was a great experience just getting to be there and to some degree be a part of practices and behind the scenes and everything. So that helps with learning the game for sure and getting that kind of insight. And then at this level, it was always like, even in high school, my reality is that at 6 feet and not blessed with the gifts necessary to go play pro ball. So it was always, even back then, aimed towards sports media. I created a show for my high school called On the Contrary, which was modeled after Pardon the Interruption. I would do play-by-play for sports I didn't participate in. I did radio and did this kind of like youth national sports radio show where I remember getting to interview Vince Wilfork, for example. So it was like anything I could be a part of in the media space, even in high school, I was dying to be able to just experience it and start to develop those skills.
And what led into your decision to go to Syracuse? Was a big part in that eventually wanting to take a career into sports media? Because I know, from my knowledge, I know of Syracuse as being the powerhouse for sports media. The Red Sox reporter or the Red Sox commentator. Sorry, you go, Franco.
No, they took over Boston, the Syracuse Orange.
Yeah, I like to think we took over everywhere where there's a major media market. So that was in my opinion, Syracuse University, that really high-level programs like UC, Northwestern, and whatnot. And you to be a part of one of those, to be one of the high-level players in the media industry. But at the same time, that was the big draw and the destination to me. And if you're going to brave the cold over at Syracuse, where you've got that lake effect and the wind blowing constantly, then there needs to be a significant pull and a reason why. And for me, that was the experience and the relationships and everything that comes with the Syracuse University broadcast journalism and that major and that package.
Now, that gets into really another realm of conversation when it comes to media. You went to Syracuse. We've all heard about Syracuse as a media school, but with you going there, what made Syracuse a different school than all the other schools out there for media? What made the difference for Syracuse and media?
It's hard to say just because I haven't experienced a Maryland program or any other school, for example. But for me, I was comfortable with Syracuse. I had gone because my sister, who's older, went there before I did. So I was able to visit and see what it was all about. You combine what that was like with its reputation and everything, and just all the names that they put out there. And I already knew going in that it is very much a network that is willing to help out and is so proud of the reputation and continuing to carry it forward that they will come back and talk and give you advice, and then you can build this network. So to me, everything about how people carried themselves and all of that and what they're willing to do to give back, my familiarity with the program, its reputation, everything just kind of clearly signaled to me this was the right fit.
Yeah, we talk about networking on here all the time and really on and off the program. So, when it comes to universities and media programs, that networking is certainly important. And being a Syracuse alum, in which you are, I'm sure the networking is just robust out there with the amount of Syracuse media members that exist out there in the media field. But go ahead, David.
No, I mean, that kind of was part of my question is, have you had a chance to talk to our very own play-by-play commentator for the Celtics, Drew Carter, about being a Syracuse alum?
Absolutely. Love Drew. And, there was a Syracuse guy on the Jazz roster the other nights. We talked about that, Elijah Hughes. And Drew was on the call when he hit a buzzer beater to get the Orange a victory. So, yeah, absolutely. Love Drew. He does a phenomenal job. I'm glad to have him here. And it's just part of further spreading that Syracuse, that Newhouse Mafia takeover that you guys are referencing.
And hearing about your background, it seems like you've been able to cover all facets of media and really expand it into multimedia. How important is it to be versatile in your approaches to getting your own content out and being a journalist, being a podcaster, being on radio, and being in television as well?
Yeah, I would think that there are few exceptions, like if you're doing play-by-play, for example, but for most of us in the media space, I would quite frankly label that, Franco, as mandatory. If you want to be able to get your work out, build your presence, build your brand, and have people aware of who you are, you're competing with so many people, whether it's within just the Celtics beat, within NBA coverage, or just for people's entertainment when there's so many options across the board in and outside of sports, that you have to wear multiple hats and figure out how to reach your targeted audience and what you do best in catering to them. So I think that is mandatory. And it's funny, I don't want to get too long-winded, but I can remember coming out of Syracuse, and there were some people in this industry who they didn't like when I would tell them that I genuinely enjoy participating in all facets of this industry in this field. And they're like, you need to pick one and just be more selective. Almost like when you hear people talk about a young athlete needing to be hyper focused on a particular sport. I think that is going down the wrong path. And for me, being comfortable producing a show as well as in front of the mic, for example, writing and then knowing how to edit and video produce content, I think that has really paid off for me.
Now, you've covered both the NFL and the NBA. We were able to take a look at your resume. Couple questions related to that. The first one being, which league was or is your favorite to cover? And which league do you feel is more media friendly, like easier to get a hold of players and members of the organization?
That's a great question. My favorite has been being a part of the Celtics beat. I mean, this is just an experience that I would not trade for literally anything. It's been, as high as my expectations and excitement level were when I first started on the beat, it's exceeded that, quite frankly. And as far as what's the most friendly to work with, in my experience, there's been some NFL locker rooms where, and I don't know whether it is or is not this way across the board in the NFL. Perhaps it is, but in my experience with NFL locker rooms, the access is pretty impressive and media friendly in terms of being able to walk up and have a conversation with a player after the game and get something that's worth sharing with an audience out of that. It's not always like that in the NBA. So from my experiences in the NFL, that's certainly, that level of access goes a long way.
Now, Bobby, did you go ahead, David? Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
Okay. Do you wish at all that you were a Patriots beat reporter with how open the locker room was last year and them giving away basically every single thing at every point of last season?
I mean, it'd be fun to be a part of that for sure, right? But at the same time, there was no part of me that wanted to change beats, and I don't feel that way right now either. So yeah, if you can be, in the room when that's going down, for sure, but you have to appreciate the day-to-day grind as well. And so for me, and what's best suited for my interest in all of that and scheduling wise and everything, I'd rather be on the Celtics beat.
Now, Bobby, on a gamely basis, when it comes to covering the game of basketball, what exactly is your process in producing the content in which you bring out to the users? Now, we were just talking about, and you were just talking about it, how the access within the NFL may be a little bit more friendly than the NBA. Now, did you cover the NBA before the year of 2020? Just real quick.
Yes, but not well. I had been in some locker rooms before, namely with the Celtics, but a lot of my coverage NBA wise before 2020 was remote.
I see. Because I know the media game within the NBA sphere was just a little bit different before COVID, if I'm not mistaken. There was a little bit more access to the players, the coaches, the locker rooms before COVID. To my knowledge, the NBA shut some of that down during COVID, and now 5 years later, literally 5 years to almost a day later, speaking of yesterday, it was the 5 year anniversary of the NBA completely shutting down. 5 years later, the NBA still hasn't brought a lot of that access back into their locker room. So that kind of leads me to the question of what is your process of content making for a game day? What exactly do you produce on a game day, and how do you go about doing that at an arena?
I think it all depends. It's so context specific to who's the opponent, is there shoot around, who do we get a shoot around, what comes out of that, and you might put more into, especially now in my, even the role like someone who is exclusively on the Celtics beat and not covering the NBA from a league wide perspective. They might be cranking something out that's a little more of a preview piece, and that works for a potential finals preview like Celtics Thunder, but it doesn't have the same appeal a couple nights ago when it's Boston versus Utah. So everything to me there is about what does that day look like? Who are they playing? Shoot around is a big part of it. And just trying to provide insight and access and content that people otherwise might not be getting.
Do you have a relationship with any of the players or coaches that you've interacted with?
Define the word relationship there in terms of the spirit of your question.
Sure. So, like a personal relationship, we often talk about reporters, or we hear about reporters giving their phone numbers out to athletes, and them texting them like scoops when certain stories are about to break, or them leaking certain things happening on locker rooms. Do you happen to have more of a, I guess, personal, more close relationship with some players or coaches? I've heard stories about coaches pulling reporters in a locker room to like into their office to go break down film with them or tell them about what certain players need to work on. Has any of that ever happened with you over the course of your media career?
No, neither one of those. I've never had someone pull me aside to break down film one-on-one or say, hey, we saw this in your piece and we didn't think it was accurate. I have had some people, I'm not going to name names, but I've had some people agree to where at least you can be more of service to, again, the audience in getting information and being able to provide that. So there's definitely an element of that. But, to kind of go in more like a almost cartoonish degree with the question, it's not like me and someone on, a Celtics player hanging out on a Saturday night or regularly exchanging text messages, but certainly you want to have a relationship. You want them to both know you and trust you. And that, again, the job, getting information is such a crucial element to it that it is important to develop those relationships.
And this could go in tune with your answer to a previous question about how it was so easy. This could apply, I guess, to NFL or NBA. This next question I'll ask you, where it was a lot easier, you said, for you to get access to locker rooms in the NFL and get some good sound bites from NFL players. Have you ever found it where when you've gotten a good soundbite or you've built a good rapport with the player, but say they have a bad game and you have to come out and, maybe write about how they struggled in that game? Have you ever had somewhat of an internal conflict when you're putting out a piece after the team you're covering is having a tough loss and you have to potentially go out of your way to criticize a player that played poorly, even though they've been nothing but good to you in your interactions with them?
Yeah, and I think that's an important question. And for me, the answer is no. I've always been of the guiding light that you have to be objective and you have to be honest, but you also have to be respectful. So even if I'm writing a piece and I don't anticipate the players going to see it, for example, I still treat it like, how would they feel if we were having this conversation face to face? And that doesn't mean that you edit it to sort of acquiesce and make it even more player friendly, and therefore it becomes a bit less honest or a bit less of how you genuinely saw the events unfold. but I do want to be respectful, and I think that's paramount at all times.